It was a quiet afternoon inside one of the most luxurious hotel lobbies in the city, a place where marble floors reflected soft golden lights, and wealthy businessmen walked around with the confidence of people who believed they owned the world. Among them, unnoticed at first, walked Jason Statham. No fancy suit, no sunglasses, no entourage. Just a simple black t-shirt, worn jeans, and the calm, grounded presence he always carried. Jason had come alone, hoping to grab a cup of coffee and enjoy a few minutes of peace before heading to a charity meeting nearby. He moved with ease, nodding politely to staff members who didn't even realize who he was. To most people, he looked like an average guy, someone who didn't quite fit the luxury environment around him. And that was exactly when trouble began. At the far end of the lobby, a wealthy man in an expensive designer suit noticed Jason walking past. Tall, loud, and surrounded by friends who laughed at all his jokes, the man carried himself like he owned the entire building. He glanced at Jason with a look of annoyance, as if Jason's presence disrupted the perfection of his world. The man lifted his chin and scoffed. "Hey you," he called out, loud enough for half the lobby to hear. "This area isn't for delivery workers. Use the staff in trance." For a moment, Jason didn't realize the man was talking to him. When the rich man repeated himself, even louder this time, Jason turned, eyebrows slightly raised in confusion. "Is there a problem?" Jason asked calmly. The rich man laughed, shaking his head. "Problem? Yes. You're not dressed for this place. So either you leave, or wait outside for your ride. People like you shouldn't be walking around here." A few heads turned. Conversations paused. People sensed something was about to happen. But Jason didn't glare. He didn't push back. He simply stood there, relaxed, hands in his pockets, studying the man with quiet curiosity. "I'm just here for a coffee," Jason replied softly. The rich man rolled his eyes dramatically. "Coffee? Here? Please. Don't embarrass yourself." No one in that lobby, especially the arrogant man, had the slightest idea who they were talking to. And what Jason did next would leave the entire lobby in absolute shock. Jason Statham had no intention of causing a scene, but what happened next forced everyone in that restaurant to rethink what respect truly means. As the room settled after that tense confrontation, something remarkable unfolded, something no one could have predicted. The rich man, Leonard Crane, sat back in his leather chair, swirling his expensive drink, clearly annoyed that Jason had interfered. He muttered under his breath, loud enough for the nearest tables to hear. "Actors think they're heroes in real life too." His friends laughed in support, but their laughter felt hollow now. Many customers were still staring, whispering quietly, trying to figure out what exactly had happened between the two men. Meanwhile, Jason returned to his table, calm as ever, as if nothing had happened. But the old blind woman sitting near the corner, who had witnessed everything through the sounds, not sight, lifted her head. She may not have been able to see Jason helping that poor young waiter earlier, but she had heard every word, every shift of tone, every tremble in the rich man's voice when Jason confronted him. What she said next changed the atmosphere again. She softly called out, "Young man, whoever defended that boy, thank you. People like you remind us that kindness still exists." And suddenly, Jason's identity no longer mattered. Celebrity or not, he had done something human, something real, and the entire room felt it. Before Jason could reply, the waiter Leonard had humiliated returned to the floor, still shaken but trying hard to hold himself together. He carefully carried a tray of glasses, avoiding Crane's table altogether this time. But his hands were trembling so much that one of the glasses almost slipped. Jason noticed. So did Leonard. And Leonard smirked. He leaned back again and said in an intentionally loud voice, "Unbelievable. They hire anyone these days. If you can't handle a simple tray, you don't deserve tips. Or a job." That was the moment the entire restaurant turned cold. People looked at each other, some embarrassed, some angry. A few even whispered under their breath, "Why is he still talking like that?" But nobody spoke up. Not a single person, except the one who already had. Jason stood up again. But this time, something different happened. He didn't walk toward Leonard. He walked toward the young waiter. "Hey," Jason said gently, "come here for a moment." The young man hesitated but stepped forward. Jason placed one hand on his shoulder. "You're doing great. Forget what that man said. Everyone starts somewhere. Don't let anyone take away your confidence." The waiter's eyes began to water. Not from fear this time, but from relief. Jason took the tray from him, and, with a smile, he said loudly enough for the whole restaurant to hear, "Let me show you something." People leaned forward. Phones quietly lifted, some already recording. Jason walked across the restaurant floor, holding the tray perfectly balanced, then stopping in front of Leonard Crane's table. Without breaking eye contact, Jason set the tray down gently in front of him. "Carrying a tray doesn't define a person," Jason said. "How you treat people does." A few customers clapped quietly. Others nodded. Even Leonard's friends shifted uncomfortably in their seats. But Jason wasn't done. He turned toward the rest of the restaurant. "By the way," he said, raising his voice just enough to engage the audience, "I'd love to know, which country or city are you watching from? Let me know in the comments below." The room seemed to come alive. Though they weren't YouTube viewers, the people inside felt that same moment of engagement, like Jason had pulled them into something meaningful. Then, turning back to Leonard, Jason spoke with a calm firmness that demanded respect. "You insult people because you think money makes you untouchable. But the truth is, real strength is quiet. Real power is responsibility. Real worth is in how you treat the ones who can't give you anything in return." Leonard laughed sarcastically. "Save the speech for your next movie." Jason tilted his head slightly. "My movies don't matter here. What matters is what you just did. You embarrassed a young man doing an honest job. And for what? To feel important?" Leonard slammed his hand on the table. "I don't need life lessons from an action star. And I don't need to be an action star to recognize a bully," Jason replied calmly. Silence. A deep, heavy silence. Even the kitchen staff peeked out from behind the door. The manager stepped forward cautiously, unsure of what to do. But for the moment, nobody intervened. Everyone wanted to see what would happen next. Suddenly, the blind old woman in the corner lifted her hand. "Sir," she said, addressing Leonard, "I may not see faces, but I can hear hearts. And yours sounds very empty tonight." A collective gasp filled the room. Leonard froze. Jason didn't say another word. He didn't need to. Sometimes, the truth doesn't require volume, only clarity. And this moment was just the beginning. Because what happened next would leave the entire restaurant stunned in absolute disbelief. The restaurant had fallen into a strange silence, one filled not with fear, but with anticipation. Leonard Crane, a man used to controlling every room he walked into, now looked unsettled. No one was arguing with him, yet he felt completely outnumbered. Respect, he was learning, could not be bought, demanded, or forced. It had to be earned. But instead of reflecting, he grew angrier. He stood up abruptly, causing his chair to scrape loudly against the floor. "This is ridiculous," he growled. "All of you, acting like I've committed some crime. I simply spoke the truth. If that boy can't handle his job, why should I pretend otherwise?" The young waiter flinched at the words, but Jason stepped slightly in front of him, not aggressively, but protectively. "Truth," Jason said quietly. "Truth isn't an excuse to humiliate someone, especially someone giving their best." Leonard scoffed. "You think you're some hero because you stepped in? Please. All you actors live off fake bravery." Jason didn't respond. His silence was more powerful than any comeback. But before anyone could speak again, something unexpected happened. A young woman at a nearby table stood up. She had been silent the entire time, observing, unsure whether to get involved. But now, her voice trembled with emotion. "That waiter," she said, pointing gently toward the young man, "is my little brother. And he works double shifts because our mother is sick. He's doing everything he can to support our family. You don't know anything about him, yet you insulted him like he's worthless." A wave of emotion rippled through the restaurant. The waiter looked shocked. He hadn't wanted attention. He definitely didn't want pity. But now, his secret was out, and everyone could see the pain behind the smile he had been trying to maintain. Leonard rolled his eyes. Everyone has problems. That doesn't change the fact he made a mistake. Jason took a slow breath and stepped closer, not threatening, not angry, just firm. "Then let me tell you something," Jason said. "I grew up with nothing. I worked jobs like his. I struggled. And the only thing that kept me going was the belief that good people existed, people who would treat me with dignity, even when I had nothing to offer them. What you did wasn't about a mistake. It was about power. You used yours to hurt someone." More heads nodded around the room. People whispered, "He's right. That poor kid. This man really crossed the line. Even Leonard's friends were shifting, uncomfortable, no longer laughing or supporting him. They looked at each other, silently realizing they were standing on the wrong side of the moment. But Leonard wasn't finished. His ego wouldn't let him back down. He jabbed a finger toward Jason. I don't care who you are. You embarrassed me. And nobody embarrasses me in public. Jason raised an eyebrow, almost amused. You embarrassed yourself. All I did was hold up a mirror. A few customers clapped softly. Leonard's face turned red. He stepped forward, plenty of anger in his expression, but before he said another word, the blind old woman spoke again. Sir, she said, her voice surprisingly firm, anger will not fix what you have broken tonight. Leonard turned to her sharply. And what exactly have I broken? Your own dignity, she replied. And perhaps your peace. The restaurant fell silent again. For the first time, Leonard didn't have a quick retort. Something about her tone, gentle but unwavering, hit deeper than he expected. But before anything could soften, another voice rose. This time, it came from the kitchen doorway, where the restaurant manager stood. I saw everything, the manager said. And I want to say something. Everyone turned. The manager walked forward, not nervous, but resolute. This waiter is one of the hardest working people on my team. He has never disrespected a customer. He follows every rule. He goes home late and arrives early. And yes, he made a mistake tonight. But mistakes don't define people. How we treat them does. More clapping. Louder this time. Leonard looked around, suddenly surrounded not by admiration, but by collective judgment. He had never experienced this before. He was used to getting away with everything. Insults, arrogance, entitlement. But tonight was different. Jason watched him calmly, waiting to see what this man would choose next, pride or growth. Finally, Leonard snapped. You all think you're so righteous, he spat. Fine. If this is how this place treats paying customers, I'm leaving. He grabbed his expensive coat and threw money onto the table, far more than the bill required, as if trying to prove he still had control. But the action only looked desperate. As he stormed toward the door, Jason called out, Money won't fix character. Leonard froze in the doorway, fists clenched, but he didn't turn around. He walked out. The door shut behind him. For a moment, no one spoke. Then applause filled the room, genuine, loud, heartfelt. Not for Jason alone, but for kindness, for courage, for decency. The young waiter wiped his eyes, overwhelmed. His sister hugged him tightly. The manager put an arm around his shoulder. Jason, ever humble, only smiled and nodded. Then he turned toward the audience, toward the camera, and added, Before we continue, I want to know something. Where are you watching from? Which country or city? Let's see how far this message of kindness can reach. And with that, the story moved toward the moment nobody was ready for. Because what happened after Leonard stepped outside changed everything. Outside the restaurant, the night air was colder than before. Streetlights reflected off the pavement, and a soft wind rustled through the trees lining the sidewalk. Leonard Crane stepped out into the open, still fuming, still boiling with embarrassment. He wasn't used to being challenged, especially not in public, and especially not by someone who didn't seem intimidated by him. He marched toward his luxury car, a sleek black vehicle parked right at the front. His driver stood waiting, holding the door open. But Leonard wasn't ready to leave. Not yet. His pride wouldn't allow it. He turned around sharply. No one talks to me like that, he muttered under his breath. Nobody. Inside the restaurant, the atmosphere slowly returned to normal. Customers whispered excitedly about what they had just witnessed. The young waiter sat down, trembling slightly, still overwhelmed by the kindness he had been shown. His sister remained by his side, holding his hand. Jason took a deep breath and smiled gently at the waiter. You did nothing wrong, kid. Don't let anyone make you feel small. Thank you, sir, the waiter said, wiping his eyes. I don't know how to repay you. You don't need to, Jason said. Just keep going. Keep working hard. That's enough. But Jason's instinct told him something wasn't finished yet. Leonard had left, yes, but not peacefully. There was an edge in the man's voice, a dangerous resolve he had heard many times before in very different settings. Jason's expression changed slightly, an alertness washing over him. The manager noticed. Is everything all right, Mr. Statham? Jason hesitated. Then he shook his head. I should check outside. He walked toward the door calmly, but with purpose. The blind old woman sitting near the entrance reached out, sensing his movement. "Be careful," she said softly. "I will," Jason replied. When Jason stepped outside, the cold air hit his skin. He spotted Leonard almost immediately, pacing near his car like a caged animal. His friends had followed him out, trying to calm him, but Leonard brushed them off angrily. "As soon as he comes out, I'm going to make him regret ever speaking to me," Leonard snarled. His friends exchanged uneasy glances. "Leonard, maybe you should just go home." "Home?" Leonard repeated, his voice rising. "After being humiliated like that? No, I'm not done." Jason approached slowly. "Looking for me?" he said. Leonard turned sharply, eyes burning with hostility. "There you are. I knew you'd come out eventually." Jason kept his hands loose, relaxed at his sides. "I came to see if you were calming down. But it seems like you're not." Leonard laughed darkly. "Calming down? You insulted me in front of an entire restaurant." "No," Jason corrected calmly. "You insulted yourself." That sentence hit Leonard like a slap. His friends tried to intervene. "Leonard, come on. Let's not do this." "Shut up," Leonard barked. "I need to put this nobody in his place." Jason raised an eyebrow. "Nobody?" Leonard stepped forward aggressively, stopping only inches from Jason's face. "You think your little speech makes you someone? You think you're better than me because you helped some poor kid?" Jason didn't flinch. "I don't think I'm better than anyone. But I know when someone is being cruel." Leonard's eyes twitched. "And what are you going to do if I am cruel?" Leonard taunted. "Hit me? Threaten me? Intimidate me? Do you even know who I am?" Jason smiled, an amused, almost gentle smile. "No," he said softly. "But I know exactly what kind of person you are." That made Leonard snap. He shoved Jason hard in the chest. Jason stepped back slightly, not from weakness, but from control. His stance remained perfectly balanced. Not once did he raise a hand. But Leonard wasn't finished. He shoved Jason again, harder this time. "Fight back," he shouted. "Go on. Show them all you're a fraud." Pedestrians nearby stopped to stare. Some even began recording, sensing that something big was happening outside the restaurant. But Jason remained still, completely unshaken. "Leonard," he said calmly, "I'm not fighting you." "Coward," Leonard spit. "You're scared. You know I'll destroy you." Jason chuckled softly. "If you think throwing a tantrum in front of your friends is strength, then you've already lost." Leonard's face turned crimson. He swung his fist back, ready to punch. Gasps echoed across the sidewalk. But before the punch landed, a voice erupted behind them. "Leonard, stop!" Everyone turned. A man in a suit hurried toward them, tall, authoritative, and instantly recognizable. It was the hotel director. But what he said next made every single person freeze. "Leonard Crane, do you have any idea who you're attacking?" Leonard frowned. "What are you talking about?" The director pointed at Jason, astonished that Leonard still hadn't realized. "That man you're trying to fight is Jason Statham." Silence. Utter, complete silence. Leonard blinked. Once. Twice. His mouth opened, but no sound came out. Jason simply nodded politely. People on the sidewalk erupted. Some gasped. Some cheered. Others rushed closer, whispering excitedly. And Leonard Crane looked like the ground had disappeared beneath him. His arrogance shattered in an instant. His friends stepped back, ashamed to even be seen beside him. And Jason? He just watched him quietly. Because the real lesson was only beginning. Leonard Crane stood frozen in place, his rage suddenly evaporating as the hotel director's words hit him like a tidal wave. Jason Statham. The Jason Statham. The man whose films he had watched, whose interviews he had admired, whose discipline he secretly envied. But he hadn't recognized him tonight. Not in casual clothes. Not without the spotlight. Not without security or cameras around him. Everything Leonard had said, every insult, every shove, every arrogant command. He had done that to Jason Statham. The realization drained the color from his face. His friends looked away in embarrassment, quietly stepping backward, wanting no part of the disaster unfolding. A few pedestrians whispered excitedly, their phones now pointed at Leonard like truth-telling spotlights he could not escape. The hotel director approached him, furious. "Leonard, you've crossed the line tonight. Not only did you verbally harass staff, but you physically attacked a global celebrity on private property." Leonard swallowed hard, his throat suddenly dry. I didn't know it was him," he stammered. Jason finally spoke, his voice calm, steady, but carrying a weight that silenced the entire street. That's the problem, Jason said. You didn't know? And yet you acted like you had the right to treat anyone however you wanted. Leonard turned, eyes wide, guilt slowly replacing pride. Mr. Statham, I apologize. I had a bad day. I didn't mean. Jason lifted a hand slightly. Stop. Leonard froze. This isn't about me, Jason said. It never was. The crowd leaned in, sensing something important was coming. Jason took a slow breath, his eyes locked onto Leonard's, not with anger, but with an honesty Leonard wasn't used to facing. You humiliated a waiter who was just doing his job, Jason continued. You berated a young man in front of strangers. You shattered his confidence because you felt powerful, and you did it without knowing his story, without caring, without thinking. Leonard shifted uncomfortably, but Jason didn't stop. You see money, status, fame as shields. But they're not. They're illusions. They don't protect you from being a bad person, and they don't excuse cruelty. Leonard felt his legs weaken. No one had ever spoken to him like this. Not his employees, not his friends, not even his family. Jason stepped closer, though there was no aggression in his movements. When you shoved me, Jason said, it didn't make you strong. When you insulted that waiter, it didn't make you important. It just showed how afraid you are of being insignificant. A painful silence followed. Leonard looked down. It felt like Jason's words had peeled back every layer of arrogance he had built around himself over the years. Jason continued, real strength isn't measured by how loudly you shout or how many people you can put down. It's measured by how you treat the people who have nothing to offer you. A few people clapped softly. The waiter, who had stepped outside with his sister, watched the scene with teary eyes. Jason turned to him for a brief moment, offering a reassuring nod before facing Leonard again. I stayed calm tonight, Jason said. Not because I'm weak, but because I refuse to become like the people who hurt others to feel big. Leonard's eyes glistened, the weight of the moment finally hitting him. Jason's tone softened, not forgiving, not harsh, but deeply sincere. I don't want you to apologize to me, Jason said. I want you to apologize to the young man inside, because he didn't deserve what you did to him. Leonard's voice cracked. I can do that. But Jason's words weren't finished yet. One more thing, Jason added. You still have a chance to be better. But that chance disappears the moment you choose your ego over kindness. Leonard nodded slowly, tears threatening to spill. At that moment, the hotel director looked at Jason. Mr. Statham, I didn't know you were coming here tonight. If we had known, we would've. Jason interrupted gently. I'm just a man getting coffee. That's all. Please don't treat me differently. The director nodded gratefully. Then Jason turned to Leonard one last time. Tonight wasn't about who I am, Jason said quietly. It's about who you could become. Leonard finally broke. His shoulders slumped, his expression softened, and he whispered, thank you. But Jason wasn't done teaching the lesson. He said, now let's go back inside. You owe someone else the apologies you tried to give me. Leonard nodded again, more firmly this time. And so the two men, one humbled, one quietly powerful, walked back toward the restaurant door in front of a crowd that would never forget what they had witnessed. Because what happened next inside would change Leonard's life forever. The restaurant grew quiet the moment Jason and Leonard stepped back inside. Conversations halted. Forks froze in midair. Every eye inside turned toward them. The same man who had walked out moments earlier, furious, arrogant, and boiling with pride, now looked almost unrecognizable. His shoulders were lower, his expression softer, and the fire in his voice had been replaced by a heavy, painful humility. Jason walked beside him, not towering like a hero, not boasting like a victor, but simply guiding Leonard toward the right thing, toward the truth. The young waiter stood near the service counter, nervously twisting a napkin in his hands. His sister stayed close to him, ready to defend him again if she had to. The manager stepped forward, unsure of what was about to happen. Customers leaned slightly over their tables, watching the unfolding scene with bated breath. Leonard stopped a few steps in front of the waiter. He tried to speak, but no words came out. His throat tightened. His pride resisted, even now. But this time, something stronger pushed back, regret. I owe you an apology, Leonard finally began, his voice cracking. I treated you terribly tonight. And not because you did something wrong, but because I wanted to feel powerful. I insulted you, I embarrassed you, and I crossed lines I never should have crossed. The waiter looked shocked, unsure whether to trust what he was hearing. Leonard continued, forcing himself to hold eye contact. You were doing your job, and you were doing it well. I was the one who failed tonight, not you. The waiter blinked rapidly, overwhelmed. I shouldn't have spoken to you like that, Leonard said, voice trembling now. I'm truly sorry. Silence washed through the restaurant like a slow wave. Even the staff in the kitchen poked their heads out, witnessing something rare, an apology not made out of fear, but out of genuine remorse. The waiter took a shaky breath. Thank you, he whispered. I didn't expect that. You deserved better, Leonard replied. Jason watched quietly in the background, letting the moment belong to them. The sister stepped forward, her expression melting from hostility into cautious understanding. He worked so hard, she said softly. He didn't deserve to be treated that way. Leonard nodded. I know. And I promise, this won't happen again. The manager approached next. Mr. Crane, he said firmly, this restaurant stands for respect. We value our people. Tonight was difficult, but what you just did means something. Leonard swallowed. I hope so. A few customers clapped gently. Others nodded with approval. The entire energy of the restaurant shifted, lighter, calmer, filled with relief after a storm. Jason stepped forward finally, placing a hand on Leonard's shoulder. That's what real strength looks like, he said quietly. Owning your actions. Leonard looked at him, eyes still wet. You were right, he whispered. About everything. I let my ego speak louder than my humanity. Jason replied, It happens. What matters is what you do after. A small smile tugged at the waiter's lips. Would you maybe like to sit down? I can bring you a new drink. Leonard exhaled, humbled to the core. No. Tonight. I don't deserve to be served by you. But thank you. Truly. Jason turned toward the restaurant crowd and said warmly, Before we continue the story, have you ever seen someone change after being confronted with the truth? Let me know in the comments. I'm reading every single one. This is your requested engagement line for part 6. The moment settled. People returned to their meals, talking quietly about what they had witnessed, some shaking their heads in disbelief, others smiling with admiration for the unexpected turn of events. But something else was brewing. As Jason and Leonard prepared to walk toward the exit, the blind old woman, the one whose voice had cut through the tension earlier, rose from her seat. She steadied herself with her cane and slowly approached the two men. Both Jason and Leonard paused. Her eyes, cloudy with age but glowing with wisdom, lifted toward Leonard. You learned something today, she said gently. And that makes this a good night. Leonard bowed his head respectfully. Thank you, ma'am. She turned to Jason, placing a delicate hand on his forearm. And you? Thank you for choosing patience over pride. Jason smiled softly. Sometimes patience is the loudest message. The old woman nodded. Tonight, many hearts were changed. Not just his. She walked back to her table, leaving behind a silence filled with meaning. Leonard took one final look around the restaurant, the scene of his mistake and his redemption. Jason, he said quietly, I'll never forget this. Jason nodded. Good. Just make sure you don't forget the waiter either. Leonard managed a small, sincere smile. As they stepped toward the exit, a small group of customers applauded. Not loudly, not dramatically, but with genuine respect. Because tonight wasn't just a confrontation. It was a transformation. And the world was about to find out. By the next morning, what had happened inside that quiet restaurant was no longer just a private incident. It had become global news. Someone from the sidewalk had uploaded the entire confrontation, the humiliation, the apology, and Jason's powerful speech about kindness. And within hours, the video had spread like wildfire across social media platforms. Millions of people watched, shared, and commented. Some were shocked. Others were inspired. But everyone agreed on one thing. Jason Statham had handled the situation with a level of dignity that most people could only admire. Clips of Jason calmly, standing his ground, played across timelines. The scene of Leonard apologizing to the waiter became one of the most replayed moments of the week. News anchors discussed it. Influencers reacted to it. People around the world weighed in, praising Jason's ability to stay composed under pressure and speak truth without cruelty. But the biggest reaction came from those who felt seen, those who had been bullied, mistreated, or judged by people who thought they were better. For them, Jason wasn't just a movie star that night. He was a voice they had longed to hear. Meanwhile, Leonard Crane watched the viral explosion with a mix of shame and gratitude. He had never expected the world to witness the worst moment of his life. But deep down, he knew it was exactly what he needed. That afternoon, Leonard returned to the restaurant. Not with fancy clothes, not with friends, not with arrogance. He came alone. And this time, he asked to speak with the waiter privately. What he said wasn't recorded. It wasn't posted online. It didn't need to be. But witnesses said the conversation lasted over 20 minutes. They said Leonard apologized again, more deeply, more honestly. They said he offered help, not money, but mentorship, opportunities, ways to grow. And the young waiter accepted, not because he needed anything from Leonard, but because he understood that forgiveness wasn't weakness. It was strength. Later that day, Jason returned to the same spot. The waiter ran up to greet him, smiling wider than before. "Sir," he said, "I wanted to tell you thank you. Not just for standing up for me, but for showing him the right path." Jason smiled. "You did the brave part. You forgave." The blind old woman, sitting again near the corner, lifted her head when she heard Jason's voice. "You came back," she said softly. Jason approached her. "I wanted to make sure everyone was all right." She nodded. "You changed a man's heart last night. That's not something many people can do." Jason considered her words for a moment. "Sometimes," he said, "people don't need punishment. They need a mirror." The woman smiled gently. "And sometimes, they need someone to hold the mirror steady." Jason chuckled. Maybe so. The restaurant felt different now, warmer, calmer, filled with a quiet pride. Something heavy had been lifted from it. The staff worked with renewed confidence. The customers smiled at the waiter with kindness. Even the air felt lighter. Jason said his final goodbyes, stepping out into the afternoon sunlight. And as he walked away, the young waiter whispered to his sister, "I'll never forget this night." Neither would the millions who watched it. Because the world saw something rare. Power without violence. Strength without shouting. Fame without ego. And kindness without expecting anything in return. Jason's message had traveled far beyond that restaurant. It had become a reminder heard across the globe. Respect isn't earned by wealth or status. It's earned by how you treat the people who can't give you anything back.